Hey, good morning, folks. We are going to continue working on the book cover to the Innoraven Shatterer book cover. That is an adventure for Dungeons and Dragons that we've been commissioned to produce. We have a work in progress here. I'm going to check my signal, make sure I'm coming through clear, get through my intro spiel, and then we'll get to work here for maybe 2 hours of fun. We'll see what we got. So hold on here real quick, checking my signal. Hold on here real quick, checking my signal. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Cool. All right, so that's coming through okay. Clickety-click, clickety-click. Get through my intro here. If you're catching me after stream, you can skip ahead like a minute, and then you'll be able to get through my intro spiel if you've heard it before. So for those that are not indoctrinated, hello, my name is Phil Kearney. I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, and then I publish them online. But today I'm not doing my own work. I am doing a commission. Monday through Friday, I have streams for books that I'm producing, either designing them or putting the artwork into the books before publication. But on Saturdays, I do commission work. So this is the next book that's in the projects. On my docket that we're working through. When this is done, we'll have another project that's teed up for Saturdays as well. So if you hang out for a while and find this stuff fun, consider you can follow me on Twitter at Phil Kearney to get notifications when I get live. But best way to support the stream is to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. We can continue to grow. So that's it. This is the book cover that we're creating. This is Innoraven is a demon from the Abyss. The Shatterer is a 70-foot tall mecha that is created out of demon bone and spite that can, using its primary cannon, basically fire a dimensional rift that opens up an arcane gate that leads to a destination in the multiverse that the operator is familiar with. So if I know a place in Edinburgh and I fire this cannon, it basically opens a black hole and destroys everything in a 100-foot, I think it's a 100-foot diameter, and basically destroys that space and it leaves a rift open between me and what would be Edinburgh. So bad news, if you know where your enemy's at, you can literally just de-res them and then take their place. So opens up a portal. It can remain open while I believe while the operator maintains concentration, allowing any number of troops to be able to flow through the destructive gate to raid whatever the destination is. So super fun war weapon here. Looking forward to it. So deconstructing the cover here. Just leave things in place. Here is the space that I've been commissioned to produce. I've fudged over a little bit, but I think the cover design is going to warrant it. I'm still waiting for a confirmation on the top banner and bottom byline ribbon, what colors they're wanting to go to for me to curve into, if they want me to. But that doesn't impact the overall composition in the meantime. So we basically have here's our layering, and we're just using a traditional Bob Ross painting techniques here to produce the background before we fuck it up with the weapon. So we have our frame, which is the byline at the bottom, DM's Guild logo, and then title card at the top. And then via Bob Ross, we drop in a skyline. And then we pull mountains into the space underneath it. One second. I'm finding myself wanting to fiddle with the lighting here a little bit. I want to push that a little bit darker, so it has a little more contrast to the background, but still is overall washed out. Hey, Hornetico, it's good to see you, guy. So here's our mountains. Here's the hills that we created. Next up, we have a background where we build the slope down into flatlands here And we have this thicket of trees, which will, of course, be a forest in the end. That'll help block off some of this gap space we have between the hills and the mountains by dropping some foliage in there. Once that gets constructed, here's the foreground of the rest of the forest. We have a little Bob Ross cottage down here. I don't know if it's gonna survive the entire painting process, but it's there for now. And good luck, little guy. And then the mid-ground here is the actual gate. So you can see here that we've carved out basically a 100 foot space where the black hole basically, or the for lack of a better word, arcane gate black hole appears, and the weapon can cross through directly itself. So our effort today is going to be filling out this background, fleshing out the foreground, and once those are done, we'll be able to. I want to add in the mid-ground last, because I want to make sure that the lighting that I use for the portal and the machine, once we have that determined, we can then hit the trees that are getting knocked asunder with the proper color highlighting that we build off of the portal. So we can have a consistent look with the foreground and the background here for the forest in general and the terrain, and then we drop the bomb in the middle of it, like quite literally, and tear it up. So that's our objective right now. We're going to start by shifting my seat, grabbing a sip of water, have a coffee chaser. We've got a timer going that'll pop in 10 minutes, and then we'll be on 20-minute cycles thereafter. I've got about a 2 hour. I got about 2 hours. 2 hours and 10 minutes. Actually, that ends up working out really well. So we'll be here for a while, and with God's grace, we'll be able to get done with the task at hand today. So let's see. I am using some of my old Bob Ross paintings as points of reference. I'm using this and this. So I think these have very similar lighting. I don't know the colors offhand because I don't see colors, so I'm going to do a color check. Yeah, very similar. So I can use either one of these. Honestly, these foreground area, that's what I'm going to want to use to help separate the. You have a low saturation back here. You've got more dichotomy and a more rich contrast and lights and darks here. So the foreground here is going to have even more saturation and more contrast and darkness. So I think we can start here. I'm going to do a gut check here. Yeah, we'll go with this one here. Get into the references. We can get to these things. Here, burp, burp, burp. These three things. Bug. Get rid of that stuff and keep these in place, out of the way, but available for us to reference when we need them. We're just getting our screen set up here, and then we can leave that up here in the title card, so it's not actually invading the actual composition. Man, my nose is just running. Hold on. All right. So stitch that up. We've got our base color. And then we want, there's our highlight color. And here's our background. I'm going to hide the forest sketch that we have for now. want to make sure I'm working with one element at a time. So I'm going to extract those, drop them here into the background. All right, so we have the loose sketch here that helps establish what the terrain is and how the land is flowing. So I can use these border marks here to cap the landmass that we're about to produce. So I'm gonna grab my sip of coffee. I haven't had that yet. We'll go with, what are we going to call this? Yeah, background, for lack of a better word. All right, so let's get into this. I've got a square brush going. I don't want a square brush. I want a round brush. There we go. That's the base that we're looking at here. True to Bob Ross style, you start off with here. I'll conceal these hills real quick. So you start with definition and then push down into mist, or you just smudge out or smooth in the bottom of the structure into the canvas to help indicate atmospheric distortion of being able to recognize how far away these mountains are, because you can't see the bottom of them. So when you build the hills, you want to have a little bit of separation between the crest of the hills and the base of the mountains, so you can maintain that image of distance because of the terrain and the mountains fading out. Similarly, the hills have high definition at the top, and then that gets smudged and worked into the canvas as you work down. But since it's closer, you can have more of an established end point here to help start establishing where ground zero in the painting actually is. You can see it snaking along here like this. So when we come back in and do this again and we start building the overall background, we can sustain that or preserve the faded base ground here that we already have from the hills as well. And so I'm just establishing again the crest of this of these lower hills. So as you get closer and closer in this illustration, as we get closer to the camera in the foreground, the land is bottoming out into what would logically be a valley. So I'm going to get rid of this line here for now and leave this terrain here. That's a separate layer that's further ahead of the terrain that we're currently working on. So we can layer that in like that. So we're working one piece at a time. Sky, then clouds, then mountains, then hills, then background, then more foreground, and then we build the trees on top of all of this. So for now, we're just going to grab and drag, pull this down. Again, as you go from the crest to the base, you lose definition. So I'm going to get a larger brush with a 50% strength on the brush's pull. There, that feels a little more. I'm going to work this sideways here. Because we don't have this here, we've got this curve going around here, and then we've got this little bend here. If I were to put water here as the low ground, this would dump into a nice reservoir like a lake. And if Inoreven is dropping his machine into a body of water, I think that might actually be a lot of fun. So I want to try to preserve. I didn't know that going in. I'm just looking at the lay of the land and how it's sitting and what do I need to preserve to be able to maintain that. And so I can see it's getting cut off here, so I might have a grotto back here, and like maybe a little bump here that can get washed over. I don't know. We'll see. The idea of having some water in here makes a lot of sense to me. But we aren't, we're just kind of letting the pixels flow and let the muse of creation guide where the piece is going to be, as always. I could push this up and over a little bit. That makes sense. I'm gonna pull this down. Hey, Zipperon, how you doing, man? This is a book cover that Brian Holmes and Andy Headley has commissioned me to produce. So, if you haven't seen it's an abyssal weapon that punches the arcane gate that it creates a portal from one reality to another, like an arcane, like a tunnel, like a wormhole, and the destination destroys wherever it lands at, and then things can come through the wormhole to attack. So it's kind of a beaching weapon, but it also causes massive damage at the destination point. So I get to make a nice little serene, happy trees environment, and then I get to drop a black hole and destroy it. So I'm very happy about that. It's a fun piece to work on. I'm glad they brought it to me. But how you doing this morning? Yeah, Saturday I work on my own books Monday through Friday. I've got like the Spelljammer book that I work on Monday through Friday mornings. I've got the Eberron adventure that Andy here is a co-writer of the adventure for the Eberron work that I do on Mondays and Thursday nights. Timely timer. On Tuesday afternoon, I work on the next books that I'll be producing, which is the martial power system, which converts martials into a spell point mana system to use different maneuvers, exploits, and sustained powers to give them a wide variety of options to build their character, kind of like how spellcasters get to pick 20 OP feats to kind of define their role in the party. The martial power system similarly grants martial characters boosts to different ability checks, saving throws, modifies movements and stuff so that they can. I've got this weird. There it is. Got rid of it. I had this weird artifact here in the corner that wasn't clearing because of the zoom. But so I developed that on Tuesday so that all 13 character classes can use the same mana mechanics that I have on the DM's Guild. I think there's a link to that down below actually. And then on Saturday I work on other people's projects. I get recruited to create art or make a map or whatever it is that we're doing. And if I'm between commissions, then I do my own work. So like whatever personal projects I hadn't made time for that aren't necessarily part of a book yet, but are things that I'm playing with. Like if I don't have another commission by the time this is done, then I'll spend time on Saturday working on my spell point sorcerer that I started developing about a year ago before Spelljammer became my primary focus. And as one project gets done, I move another project forward in my docket. So once the Spelljammer book is done, then the Eberron adventure will become my Monday through Friday morning project. The martial powers development for the mana classes will be my Monday, Thursday project. And then Tuesday opens up for my lunch stream to be something else. But Saturday will always just be a rolling project of whoever's recruited me into doing whatever. And that's more of my roots. I started doing commission work in the 3rd edition when the D20 OGL first came into existence, and it created a third-party market for Dungeons and Dragons, like a legit large-scale market. And there was back when print on demand had to be black and white because indie publishers couldn't afford color printing, and most stuff were just simple PDFs. But we've obviously evolved away from that point. But my roots were back then, doing character art and weapons like magic items and stuff as ink or pencil sketches that got scanned and then sent onto whomever it is that hired me. And around, I want to say around 2002 is when I started doing color covers. But the skill set never stops evolving. I will die hoping that I could be a better artist the next day. That is the way of the art. So I stream, one, because sometimes my clients will drop by and give me suggestions about where they want the flow to go, or I can specifically request that they show up, make an appointment with them to be here, so we can discuss like color palettes and like layouts and overall composition. But this already got green lighted, so I'm clear to have this thing flow through to the end. At this point, I generally work. I work in 3 stages. I quote a price for the total project, and then I break it up into 3 chunks. I get 1/3 is a down payment to get me on board and reserve time to work on your project, and then during that time I work on a sketch and ideation and composition to give an idea of what it is generally I think it should look like, which is a banter negotiation between me and the client to make sure that what I feel is going to be a good composition is hitting all of the important notes that that the client needs to have, either mechanically or aesthetically, to be a successful cover, or if it's a map or whatever it is, whatever the project is, to make sure that I understand where the requirements are and where I have room to be creative on my own. And so after I finished this initial sketch idea here, it got approved. And then, so that's when the first phase ends. The second phase, the second payment of the third, is then provided, and I start fleshing out, working out color palettes, dichotomy, and adding in detail to be able to check in to make sure that everything's flowing smoothly. And once I get done with by the time I get done with this landscape and start locking in the color that I want for the weapon's arrival, that's when the client will provide the third payment, and then I just render everything out. Like at that point, it's whenever I feel like it's done, it's done. But we've already have an agreement that we like where it's going, and at that point, it's just details. And when I'm working with clients that are familiar with my work or trust me in general, it gives me a lot of freedom to follow my heart and to let my brain turn off and let the muse take over and help produce something that they're going to be ultimately proud of. So it's a fun process. I like having commissions because I like the struggle of attempting to meet somebody else's expectations. Not only do I just have a sense of pride and accomplishment of being able to provide something as a service that's valued by others, but the diversity in projects, like I wouldn't have worked on this type of a project if it hadn't been requested. So it's exposing me to new ideas and different options that aren't my natural picks. So it keeps it's like exercising. It's forcing my artistic muscles to stretch and flex and strengthen, and that all carries over to my own projects. This will no doubt inspire something from me in the future. So like this weapon it's 70 feet tall. Like if we're using my Spelljammer mechanics, this is basically a land-borne vessel that fills a 100 foot by 100 foot space that I would easily be able to stat out and make a mini boss against a squadron of fighter ships, or like I could have a small convoy of infernal war machines using my landbound mecha combat to fight this weapon. It's 70 feet if the fighter craft are coming in like around 40-50 feet. That would basically be like a Empire Strikes Back scenario where land speeders are trying to knock down the walkers, so that they can, well, in D&D, knock down the machine so they could get into a 5-foot scale combat with the operators, the demon that controls it. You have to be able to defeat the machine before you can get to the pilot and the commander of the mecha. So using either Infernal War Machine or War Mecha or Spelljammer Fightercraft, anything that operates in that 50-foot or smaller scale of vehicle would be appropriate as a boss fight against this weapon. If you're equipped with larger vessels, like if you have your own Spelljammer, like a Scorpion ship or like a Damselfly, your own Spelljammer vessel that's also 70 to 100 feet, then this wouldn't be a 70-foot scale weapon. Like this would be like probably a medium or easy challenge against your actual ship. So, but it'd be super easy to be the weapon, and its plane shift capabilities is the real threat of Indroven's shatter weapon. So, but this would inspire me to potentially convert their weapon into the Spelljammer mass scale system that I've been working on in the mornings, Monday through Friday, as a fun proof of concept. I tell you, man, having effective mecha and vehicle mechanics inside of a D&D campaign really opens up a ton of different types of genre to have to be able to create different types of challenges. Like if you're fighting ship to ship, it's a pretty fair fight. If you don't have a ship and you're being chased after by mecha, that gets really freaking rough really fast. Because those things deal like CR12 to the CR25 damage, and if you're running around in your own machinery, then that CR scaling washes because your equipment's able to take the damage at a fairly similar pace. But if you're out of cockpit and you've still got large scale enemies on the battlefield, that gets real rough real quick. So you can scale up the CR because of your limited resources, which I actually think is really great about 5e in general. I'm still a big 5e fanboy, regardless of my BECME roots. It's I like how simple the design of the D20, basically the D20 genre is. 5e is a far more I want to say it's more complicated while also at the same time more simple than 3rd edition, because it's more simple than 3rd edition because there's less moving pieces and there's less bloat of different systems. Like 30 had like 7 or 8 different types of power systems, like spellcasting, psionics, incarnum, martial powers, vestiges, shadow magic, factotums, also skill tricks. There's like 7 or 8 different types of power systems that you can multi-class characters into an amalgam of these different class systems, and it allowed for very complicated and intricate builds over the course of a 1 to 20 scale. That basically the sub game in 3E was, how can I combine multi-classing and prestige classes to build out, I don't know, something that has like 30 attacks per round or whatever your objective is as your skill trick for your optimization challenge. 3E developed an entire subgenre of game of just building like these are show cars. You don't actually take these out in the street. You don't go mud bogging with these things. You don't take them for grocery shopping. They're built to look fancy and take to the show. And the show was basically the build forums. You could run a one shot with these things just to see how they handle, but they aren't built with the intention of like actually running a 1 to 20 campaign with them. You have something that's a little more, because actual campaigns are organic. I've yet to run a 1 to 20 campaign where the players ended up where they thought they were going to go, because during the development of the game, and as you start pissing off different factions of enemies and face different challenges, some armchair white room build is no longer the optimal solution for the challenges that the players have created for themselves. So there's not, when you're looking at, just as a general idea and design, when you're looking at how things are built, or like how optimal is something, it's not practical that whomever it is that's building these things is going to actually take them for a 1 to 20 level run. So I can as a DM in 5e, I can kick through a 1 to 20 campaign in about 250 to 300 hours, and it just depends on the length of the session that determines how long over time it is that campaign is going to last. But like 300 tends to be the cap. Like by the time you get that far down the pipe, the team, the DM, everybody is pretty much content with what it ran through. I actually think 220 hours is optimal, but it's really difficult to get through a full 20 campaign with 200 hours unless you're just strictly just throttling through technical content without having any kind of character interaction or downtime. It's the role playing and planning aspects of the campaign that tack on the extra 40, 50 hours, 60 hours of gameplay, because you have to have an emotional grounding, and you have to be, I like how this is coming along. I like that. That looks good. So theory crafting in 5e is far more far more reserved in comparison to 3e. That's why 5e is more basic or simple than 3e. But at the same time, it's more complicated because there's less guidance being provided by Wizards of the Coast on how to run a campaign, and the characters in 5e honestly scale about 5 levels. Feels like about 5 levels higher than what 3e did. So there's a lot more firepower and utility that characters are just born with in 5e than they had in 3e. In 3e, it was fun scaling into that power. In 5e, they start with that power and it just gets stronger over time. So, for you to be able to run, I feel like to be able to run a 1 to 20 campaign in 5e, it feels more like running like a 7 to 22 level campaign in 3e, bending into epic level stuff. Like 5e characters are like 20th level 5e characters really are like 25th level 3e characters. Very, very powerful, because there's a lot more. It feels like there's a lot more wiggle room and a lot more benefit out of decisions that characters make in 5e, because they can just do more. That's a rant. Apparently I'm done ranting about that. But so the point of all that is we were talking about scaling threats. I was talking about like fighter craft, like 5 foot, like characters on their feet, versus in fighter craft that are smaller than 50 feet, versus vessels that are larger than 50 feet, squaring off against this mecha cannon. It's the CR system in 5e is actually pretty good overall. I don't use it, but I like what I like what it implies. But the reason I don't use it is because generally the way that I pace threats in a campaign is strictly based off of what your character's capabilities are. And the things that I tend to grant as magic items or bonuses of one sort or another are things that shore up weaknesses in one character when compared to others. Like if you've got one character running around with a 27 armor class, but like the low character on the team has a 15 armor class, that's a span of 12 between 15 and 27. That makes it really difficult as a DM to statistically build a consistent threat against all characters. Like the 27 armor class is never going to get hit. So that forces you as a DM to either create designs that are completely focused on saving throws to target the armor class character, and then have normal attacks trying to target the weaker armor class characters, so they're playing different games. Or you try as a DM to provide gifts and boons and magic items that will push up that 15 armor class to like 20. So you're within a scale of 10. If a combat stat amongst characters generally spans 10, you're gonna be okay. So in this instance, taking armor class from 15 to 20 puts you only in a span of 7. So that can be your like baseline. At that level, you can have creatures like with like say a plus 14 to hit. That 27 armor class means that they're going to have to hit on a 13 or higher. So that's like a third tier. That's like a third tier campaign. And having armor classes that are ranging from 20 to 27 feels about right for a third tier campaign, level 11 through 16. So 5e is pretty keyed in. So in comparison to like on foot versus mecha versus vessels, vessels tend to have because they can deal like 200 hit points per damage per round. That's like a CR 26 creature, while fighter craft and personal mecha can only deal with the system that I use anyway, that I've been developing on stream. Generally, fighter craft, that 50-foot scale tends to cap around 60 damage per round, which is like around a 12th level. This is like 12th level. So from like CR 25 to like CR 12 to 15 to, and then if you're in vessels yourself that have hundreds of hit points, you're able to take those hundreds of hit points from the vessels that you're fighting against. So if it's like a vessel versus a craft, it's like a CR 12. If it's vessels versus a person, it's CR 27. And if you're in fighter craft and your enemies are in fighter craft, then it just becomes what level are the creatures that are commanding the ships. Like if I have goblins in mecha, killing those goblins is going to be pretty easy in my mecha because they don't have the CR, the personal stats to be able to out sustain the craft. So like goblins in mecha while you're in mecha grinds back down to like basically like a CR half, CR 1 or 2. It basically like the item, the machinery they use washes out. So if I've got vessels and you've got mecha, then I'm going to outscale you by basically 12 CR because I'm going to be doing 4 times the amount of damage that you can. If everyone's in vessels flying around in ships, then again it all washes out. If you've got goblins that are in command of a scorpion ship, then it's going to still feel like a CR 2 or 3. Because the damage that your ships can deal and can take are going to basically wash out. The only thing that's different, the only thing that remains, is the difference between your character's abilities and the goblins. So it's a pretty smooth system, but again, this is the conversation's inspired by when I finish this and if I wanted to run and play with this 70-foot weapon that's part of this adventure that I got commissioned for. If I wanted to play with it, that's the kind of things that I think about when I would play with it. And so all this rambling I've been doing is basically walking through that thought process and ultimately talking about how flexible 5e really is as a system. Even though I'm a big BECME enthusiast, I love how flexible 5e can be to allow you to build scaling systems like that. I haven't seen anybody build any scaling systems like that before because honestly it takes a lot of work. And most people, if they're a company, a corporation, it's fringe. so they wouldn't want to invest time and effort on developing it. And if you are an individual indie publisher, the amount of work that it requires would be corporate level work, which is often beyond the capacity of an individual to do. But I'm just stubborn. So I was willing to spend the 17 months developing this stuff, and now being able to talk about these things with competence is the reward I get for investing that time in developing those ideas. And hopefully, if other people jive with it, they'll buy my shit. If they don't, it's still a point of reference for me to be able to have intelligent conversations like this, and for me to use as a jump point to do something else. So, hey, there's text. What's up, RG? RG Boss Editing. Cheers, my man. I don't think I've spoken with you here on stream before. So well met, sir, and I hope you enjoy your stay. So let's go back up here to our reference. Oh, no, we have a color reference here. So we're going to, true to Bob Ross, we take the color, we work it into the canvas, and then we have, luckily in Photoshop here, we can separate things out into layers, but the next thing that Bob would do would be to just drop some chunks of highlight color on top of these mounds to start working. It's the same thing with the mountains back here, dark and light. These hills here, dark and light. And then this foreground here also dark and light. So it's the same thing that Bob Ross does. I spent a year and a half doing about 125 different Bob Ross paintings. Here, I gotta fix my chair. Excuse me. If you find me on DeviantArt at Phil Kearney. It has all of the paintings that I replicated using Photoshop, and you can see from the front to the back how I became more articulate in using the techniques that Bob expresses with his paintbrushes here in Photoshop. And that was an incredibly worthwhile endeavor to invest that time, because I can do stuff like this. So here's an actual Bob Ross painting. I forgot the name of it, but this is one of my early. This is like the 5th one that I did, and then that stuff eventually evolved into stuff like this, which is a book cover for the Universal Spell Points and High Magic book. I think that's actually linked down here. Hold on, real quick. Oh yeah, I'm not doing any self promo of my stuff down here. That's funny. I don't see any color, so I do the monochromatism promo. And my Patreon, if you want to follow me there, Twitch. Yeah, I don't actually promote any of my books here. You can see various books that I produced in like my Monday through Friday stream. So I've got different playlists that I build for the different books that I'm working on. I picked up the Eldraine Monster Manual that Wizards published on D&D Beyond 2 days ago. I'm a big color mana enthusiast, so I've built a number of books that are on DM's Guild that convert spellcasters into using color mana via Magic the Gathering. And so every time that Wizards puts out new Magic the Gathering content for Dungeons and Dragons, I have to look. I have to check it out. I have to see if there's any clues or information that they provide that can help me develop more color mana projects. And it also allows me an opportunity to play around with just color mana ideas. Like it's 25. I think I'm actually going to be on stream later on today. So anyone that's out there lurking, like and subscribe and check out my channel, because we'll have an MTG to D&D conversion stream later on today, where I go through the different monsters that are in Monsters Compendium 4, Monsters of Eldraine, and look at what they did, how they built them, and then compare them to the creatures that were inspired by them, because those 25 monsters that they published are, as I said, inspired by the different creature cards that are in the new Magic the Gathering set, Wilds of Eldraine. It's obviously a cross-promotional tool. They're obviously trying to push up user engagement from Dungeons & Dragons into Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering is a much larger cash cow for Wizards of the Coast and thus for Hasbro than what D&D is. D&D has a larger brand recognition, but Magic produces far more money. So they would like to see both of those fan bases playing both of those games. But if they're going to pull one into the other, it's going to be pulling people from D&D into Magic, like they did the Forgotten Realms Magic the Gathering set last year. That wasn't to get D&D players into Magic. That was to show Magic players the kind of narratives, characters, and creatures that are in D&D. So if they were interested in the Baldur's Gate card set, maybe they'd check out D&D. But every time they do like a Ravnica book, Theros book, Strixhaven book, Eldraine Monster Manual expansion, that is Wizards inviting D&D players. If you think this stuff is cool, there's card sets of 300 of these that you can explore and take note of and get inspiration for your game if you were to play Magic the Gathering. So it's just an obvious cross-promotional tool, but for me, it's an opportunity for me just to further develop the Color Mana system. So I celebrate that shameless plug. I'm shamelessly plugging myself. So cheers. We're all working a hustle, aren't we? We're all working a hustle. But yeah, so there's 25 creatures. They're inspired by cards. What I will do on the stream is look at each of them. They have different CRs. We're just going to look at the base creature abilities that they have. Maybe have some thoughts and comments about what they're capable of doing. We'll look at the card. Compare, look to see if there's any kind of patterning behind how much mana it takes in Magic the Gathering versus the CR of the creature in D&D. See if we can correlate some information there. And beyond that, look at what abilities it is that the creatures have been assigned or created with in Dungeons & Dragons, and then compare that to what they can do on the card in Magic the Gathering, and then see what we can do about bridging those gaps, offering additional like lair actions or legendary actions or like home field advantages to provide those creatures so that they can, so we have an opportunity to look at them a little bit more from a color perspective, from a Magic the Gathering perspective of what could these creatures, like if we're looking at a blue creature, what things about the card is there that we can convert into D&D that maintain that blue flavor. And I don't know how successful the project's going to be. It'll just be me streaming stuff, and that'll probably be in about 6 hours. But I'll be doing that this evening, and it'll be fun. There's 25 creatures. I doubt I'll get through them all tonight, so I'll probably pick it up tomorrow. Next week as well. So I've got some time on my hands this weekend and next weekend to myself, so it allows me an opportunity to play around a little bit more. So we're just going to work this into the canvas. This is ultimately what we're going to do is once we get through this, we're just going to cover it all up with forest. So right now we're just building the land where the forests are going to sit on, but we want to have as much of that language locked in here. So any terrain that peeks through the foliage and roots that we put down for the forest, there'll be enough actual information here for it to sustain the illusion of the painting, because we're doing the work to make sure that the foundation is there to warrant having a forest grow on top of this. If that makes sense. pretty happy with that. I think I actually want to push it up a touch to get rid of. See, there's a the fade from the the fade from the hill into the canvas here leaves this far higher value or whitedness at the base of the hill. So I want to raise up this landmass here to that's perfect. So I can see this line is starting to curve into each other over here. H I H B. Hold on. There. Here. Here's what I'm trying to talk about. Right over here. This bit in here. That curves into each other. So we create a neat little pocket back here. And we have the receding mass here. I'm gonna mess with the angles here a bit and smooth that out. There we go. And this little gap here is where water would naturally want to start filtering down from these hills to make maybe a happy little pond. Like we could have a pond back in here. But this ridge here creates a nice break between these hills and these hills. So I can have a far more background forest rolling around back here and then have more trunkedness going on here as we work our way further in the further forward in the canvas. So, but I'm happy with that. I'm happy with this so far. I love doing landscapes like this. They're so fun. I gotta say that year invested in making those paintings was very well worth it for me. Zero regrets. Well, hi. How are you? Manipulated Thoughts. Cheers, my man. Welcome to the stream. I'm here 6 days a week. I have 4 different projects that I'm working on right now, including this commission. Most of the work that I do is my own for the books that I publish for Dungeons & Dragons. Yeah, that's coming along nicely. All right. So we got hills. I got all the hills. We got the hills. So we're going to break this into knolls. We're just gonna call those. There's no grass on them yet, but we're gonna call them knolls nonetheless. And this is gonna be background stuff. So let's actually take this grassy knoll. Take this part here. Drop down the opacity of that line work. Now we're just going to smudge that line work in. Hey, thank you. Such kindness. I appreciate it. This is part of my my art stream playlist that I have on my channel. And there, before I was working on this one, last month there was I got a commission for a different book cover for the Revenant RPG that's in development by Joseph Vargas, also known as Ukulele Bard. He does a lot of Pathfinder Infinite work now. But he also builds a lot of fast, small-scale RPGs like D4 system stuff or like very limited scope, fast build, like one-shot, two-shot, five-shot campaign-type games. And so the Revenant campaign was a commission of me making a landscape kind of like this, but with Yggdrasil. So the world tree being the centerpiece of it. It's about nature rising up against mankind during the Industrial Revolution in a sort of spirits versus technology paradigm, with Yggdrasil being the pardon the pun, but the root source of magic for these spirits rising up. Super freaking cool idea. It was a blast building that commission. So, and this is similarly a fun project. So we'll get through this here, and then we'll build this all out. Like most of, as you can see, most of this background information is ultimately just going to get lost to this dimensional weapon tearing a hole through the middle of it all. But as I said, I want to have all the information in here because I don't know exactly how the composition is going to end up layering. And so I want to have all this in here, so any instances of being able to see the terrain in the environment poking through the trees and the magical effects, I want to be present so that you can maintain that thoroughness of this is a world that's actually being torn apart. I think that's important for the narrative in general. So now that we have those in place, we can bump this differently. We can take the not so grassy knolls out of the background and sit it in as a separate layer, bump, 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 bump. So we have our frames. If I were to get rid of the reference, we have our frames for the book cover. And then again, we add in the sky. This includes the clouds, and then the mountains, and then the hills, and then the knolls. So we're just moving forward, and we're adding more texture and more contrast and dichotomy as we move further forward to help make that atmospheric perspective. The further away something is, the more air there is between you, the more it breaks up the light, the more it makes it look lighter and desaturates the color. So that's why we're punching up the dichotomy as we move forward in the page that way. So, and I'm thinking, if I go back into the null here, I can afford to lighten that up a bit. That feels pretty good. All right, cool. So we have that. Next thing that we need to do, hey, there's my 20-minute timer. I have a 20-minute timer that rolls, so make sure that I don't stay in any one spot for too long and start micro grinding. But I'm going to take a sip of coffee here, catch up on some comments. What's up? Right on, my guy. Thank you. Appreciate the compliment. Yep. The man, oh man, I like that. Okay, I got that terrain there. I got forest there. I want to take this terrain here. I think I want to move it up. Got the foreground here. We got the midground for the weapon here. Oh yeah, this is just initial sketch. This actually doesn't belong here at all anymore. We're done with this. Bump, 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 bump. So we can take this one down and we drop it into our trash bin. Here. And when we finish the piece, we can erase the trash box. But I keep dumping pieces that I don't need anymore. I take them out of the workplace, out of the work frames here, and then drop them down into a trash drawer. But I don't actually destroy them until they're like gone. So, but we're working on the background here. So let's see how this is layering in. So we have distant forest here that's dotting the hills. And then we've got a closer forest that's poking across the grassy knolls. And then we have more forest in front of that as a layering effect. And then we have more foreground with trees on that. So I'm going to pick these up. And lift them out. And drop them into a separate layer here. I'm happy with, I know I'm going to probably end up putting grass or something on the knolls. But for now, I think I'm happy with them. So I'm going to put a lock on them to make sure they don't get fucked up. Push those back. All right, so this is where we're at. We're on the hills now with the tree lines. So what I want to do, when I finish this layer, what I'll probably end up doing is dropping it down here into the hills like this. So it's behind the actual knolls. But for now, I don't need to do that. So I can leave it here. So what we're going to do is we're going to, let's go into our brush sets here and see back greenery. There we go. I have a brush called back greenery. And it apparently isn't doing what I want it to do. Oh, that's because this whole layer is faded. That's right. I'm going to push this one up to here. I'm just going to call this close background. There. There's the... I need to put a spin on this brush. Hold on. Let me go to Windows and then that's not it. I want I want brush settings. That's right. Window, brush settings, and then we want to go into our shape dynamics and add the projector. The brush projector gives us a Z-axis. So now when I use my brush, I can spin it. See? I've got my general idea of where terrain is back here. I need to pick out a color that I like from the references. Where's something I like? Since I don't see any color, I have to use references off of other paintings and photos that I grab. So right now I'm just looking, yeah, okay, that feels pretty good. We'll go with that. There you go. Just like that. See the way that it breaks up like that, it has, since it's background, it's going to get layered over anyway. This is just a stippling that I'm doing. The brush I built is, here, I'll make it really large so you can see it. See, it's just a little oblong of bloodle. But when it's pushed back like this, there you go, just like that. I can just follow the contours of the land that we already built to be able to make these things work. I can just pull at the base of them, smudge it up a little bit just to blend it in a little. Erase what feels weird, replace it. Let's work it into the canvas. I've got like maybe 15, 20 different brushes that I use for landscapes and foliage and bushes and clouds and stuff. But if you're really developed with your skill set, you don't need really anything more than just a round brush. The brushes that you build for your techniques are, I feel, are an extension of the techniques that you develop for yourself. As you become more proficient in your own style and confident in your capabilities, you can more accurate. You can build brushes that serve your needs instead of letting the brushes do the work for you. Understand how you are working the brushes. If that makes any sense. I'm going to scratch some twigs through here to make it have more of a chunky feel to it. There we go. Well, hey, like, subscribe, stick around, swing by anytime you want, man. I'm here 6 days a week, so love having you here. Thanks for checking it out, man. Appreciate you. But I'm not talking about D&D. I'm talking about painting, or I'm talking about how business works in painting or D&D. I really appreciate you swinging by and taking interest. Thank you. Yeah, there's my initial kick. So then we can start layering on top of that. Whew, man, I like that. Let's see. Now we're going to use my tree line brush. And I need to get the Z axis going. So this brush is like that. So it's a different. It's a similar idea, but a different tool. So it's going to have a different visual. So I'm going to use a darker color this time. I don't want it that much darker. Oh, that's way too sharp. Let's go. Yeah, that feels about right. We're in a new layer here. Let's keep working stuff in. So by pulling this down, we keep the texture at the top. Just like with the mountains, we have a lot of definition at the top, and then it fades into obscurity at the base. The same thing with the forest, but with the coloring that we have for the foliage here, by smudging it into the hill, it starts creating that a sense of ground cover without us actually having to render any of that ground cover in the process. So it's just creating these ridges that we don't actually have to pay too much attention to. whole thing here. And lift it up a touch. And we'll come through same way, break it up with trunks. And I'm tapping the size of the brush. Right now it's at 1 pixel way back here, but then as I move forward, I increased it to 2 pixels, and now we're at 3 pixels, and then 5 pixels, 7, no, 5 is still good here. Actually, 4, yeah, 4 still feels good here. Down. Pull that down and smudge that in a little bit. Hill trees. We are going to drop those down into a back layer. I'm going to open that back up again. We'll make another layer. It's just layer and layer and layer and layer and layer. As you keep layering, moving forward, the more layers you have in your composition, the more depth it just starts to create in the piece overall. What I do need to keep in mind, though, is I don't want these hills overwhelming the background terrain that we have. So I'm going to push them down a little bit to get rid of some of that gap and to keep them in line with where the piece is at. But that's real easy for us to be able to build. Interesting little gap over here. I'm feeling something about that. Let's see. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to preserve this tree line here and here. So this next layer I'm going to build is going to be shrubbage and ground, basically ground foliage. This tangled tarn and mass down here is what I'm interested in right now. So we're going to again layer in front of this. We're going to switch the brush that we're using to some ground brush. Let's go with just basic bush texture here. And again, we're going to go to our windows. We're going to go to brush settings. We're going to open this shape dynamic up to be something that can spin. Here's what it looks like on its own. Like that. So what I want to do is squish it down a little bit, make it a little more flat. So it creates that kind of stuff. See, it just builds in texture onto itself. So when we layer it over the trees, it should look pretty good. We're going to use a smaller brush size here, and this just start tapping this stuff in. I'm going to use the same brush and erase some of it. I have a 20%. No, flow should be 100%. Yeah. Weird. Huh. All right. What's going on with my eraser? Eraser. Okay. Well, I guess everything's okay. We're going to tap and erase at this stuff to just create some color mash in here. Brush over. Tap, tap, tap at it. Yeah, I don't think I like how that's looking. So I'm going to get rid of that and start over. Use something else. Use a different brush. This one's not doing it for me. Different tools for different jobs. You just don't know which one you need when you need it. Let's go with... let's see. We can go with... bush texture modified. Let's go with bush shrubbery instead. All right. And this one also, brush settings, shape, projection, blop. This bush is going to look like that. I think that's going to ultimately serve us better. So let's squash it down a little bit, modify. Oh yeah, that I think is gonna work. Cool, let's do that. Nice. Oh, interesting. Okay. Let's fix that. Oh yeah, that's not cool. I accidentally painted that directly. I don't like having things painted directly on top of each other. So I made a mistake here and had those on the same layer. I need to have a separate layer here. And then push that up. Good. Now I can properly tend to this. There we go. Basically like that. I'm going to take this like here. Like this song. take this and work this into the canvas a bit as we do. Work that into the canvas. Use the contours of the land to help sculpt the lighting in the way that the angles that we use to smudge into. There we go. Just like that. We're just erasing the same ways we added, just stippling as we go. Just breaking up the shapes here, getting rid of the streakiness of the smudge. It starts to look pretty good at a distance. Go. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Holding the line here. Looks like I got some artifacts here that I need to resolve still. An artifact is when it's obviously a brush stroke that's not part of the narrative of the piece. Like these little lumps here could get away with it, but this is obviously remnant. So I need to go through and fix all that crap. So let's go to our null. Yep. Let's smudge that stuff in. There we go. Good. Stitch that back shut, lock it down. Pretty happy with that tree line. Doesn't look bad for a few minutes of work. So then let's go again here, and I like keeping some of that fade there. I might just leave that like that. Let's see what happens if instead yeah, there we go. Get rid of that. How do we want that to do? Not bad. Gonna take this here. And then this here. Right. Left. feels pretty good. I like that. Nice thing about being able to nudge things around like that, you can work on exactly where you have your stuff going. I think I want to make this rise up here and clip off the back. Yeah, I think raising these things up in general is a good idea. There. That's feeling pretty good in general. Hill trees here. Hey, thanks, Comp Code. Appreciate it. We do what we must because we can. For the good of all of us. Except for the ones that are dead. There's no sense crying over every mistake. We just keep on trying until we run out of cake. Science gets done. We make a neat gun for the people that are still alive. Where's that figment coming in from? Ah, wackadoodle. Let's get rid of that. Destroy with extreme prejudice. Very good. Let's see. Got the knolls. We're going to lock that knoll back up. Bloop. And we go back to our hill trees. Yeah, so far so good. Okay, I'm happy. I think I'm happy with that back line there. Like it completely covered up all of the. Hold on. What's going on with you, Remnant? Yeah, you can go now. Thank you. I see text happening over there. Give me a second. Knoll gets locked. Hill trees. I could drop the hill trees down a touch. What happens if I do? Some of these hills start to poke through. I don't think I actually want those hills to poke through. Like, what's up? Amen. Cheers, my man. How you doing today? I think I want one more little scrub layer, and then we should be fine. So let's go grab another brush. Let's use the conifer tips. That's how the brush looks like just by itself, right? Let's go to our brush settings, shape, and then get our Z brush going here so I can layer things together. It's just texture. Specifics aren't, just like with Bob. It's Bob Ross is not important specific strokes. It's the texture that's being added to the piece that matters. So we're going to use that same brush as our eraser. And come through here and poke at it. Just to wind it down, to push it back into the canvas a little bit, and to break up the look. Tap, pull these up a bit. Tap and pull that down a bit. Where'd that go? Here we are. Good. All right, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, not bad. All right, so next. That's done. We can take that and drop it into the trash folder now. Get it off our screen. Get off my screen. Now we got this and we have this. So we have more forestry here. This is where our next set is going to be. So how are we going to resolve this? Okay, so these are getting closer, but they're still, I mean, they have more definition than these things way back here. So we want to use the same general idea so it feels like it's the same forest. It's just kind of going across the rules in the land. So we are going to use Knoll, Hilltop. This will be a separate brush here. We're going to call this Knoll trees. There we go. Where are we at? 10:42. Okay, we still got a half hour or so. Take a sip. Love this stuff, man. I love doing this work. It is so freeing. It is so just liberating. Yeah, that feels about right. Yeah. This is the color that I need right here. And then yep, see. Yep. Yep. Oh, yup. All right, so next, how are we going to do? We actually want to go back to our foliage. And get our brush presets and get our spin back in. Spin to win, buddy. There, carve those in, following the contours of the hills that we already had. push those back a bit. Cut through those. Eraser to help build some trunks inside of there. Respecting the lay of the land. Smudging the bottom of it downhill. Create that greenage effect. And I know a lot of the stuff that we've just been working on just got completely covered up. That's okay. That's how forests are. When you're in the middle of your family, you don't necessarily stand out as an individual. I think the next thing we want to do Next thing we're going to do is we're going to build a, hey, timely timer. Let's keep it going. Take another sip of coffee. Let's grab a fun foliage brush. Faded mountain chalk. Let's go with down fronds. Nah, that's not what we want. We want let's go hunting. Hunting for fun. Fractals, no. Mountain, no. Shrubbery faded, nah. Mountain. I think grass lasses. Oh, wait. Underwater brush, maybe that'll be good. Oh yeah, that might just be what we want. We'll see. Let's see if this is what we actually want or not. I'm gonna drop down the size of that. At that, but get that texture in place there to help bottom out the trees. And then again, we pull at the bottom of the color we put in, using the contours of land to pull down to ground the foliage into the environment. And then we can smudge across to work it into the ground. There we go. Increase the size occasionally. Just a couple touches here and there. There, now that we have that in there, we can come in with our brush, and we have 30% strength eraser, so it doesn't erase all of it, just some of it. So when we tap through here, we create neat little texture effects. Come back in here again. There, and then we can again pull at the bottom of these to pull them into the canvas. All we're looking to do is have like little spots of color and texture, and like these little breaks in here are really nice. because this doesn't have to hold up to scrutiny. It just has to have a little bit of color information so that as you drift around, you get acknowledgement that there are things present here. There. Now, take the whole thing and pull it down a touch. There. I'm going to leave that be like that as knoll trees. I like this break here. I don't know how much I actually like all of that there. I think what I want to do is do little striations here. So I'm going to be bold like an American. Oh yeah, this is definitely the wrong brush to use that for. Let's grab our conifer. There, you can start layering in some trunks like that from the ground up. I think that's a fun place to have a little patch. And have another one back here, but it can't be nearly as tall. And over here, have a little patch of trees as well. I don't want them too parallel. There, that feels better. Push it over a little bit, like that. Like little copse of trees coming over to the water. There, and we got this. So we have a foreground and we have a background, and we can start. I'm going to start working the background. So let's grab our conifer brush and use it for what God intended. Chaos. I'm going to wibble it back, and as I go down, I'm going to wibble it back and forth like this to create texture, you see? Like that. And the further down we get, the less we have to care about our angles and just kind of chunk, 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 just kind of fill it in. Take the mass of this and chunk, 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 chunk. Just kind of chunk it out until it hits the hill. I'm going to smudge it in. Merge that down. %opacity. I'm going to hit the eraser. The break up the shape a little bit and add a little texture back in. Let me break it up down here a little bit more. Good. Now we'll do it on the same on the other side. Better hit save. That was a weird anomaly. I just saw a hiccup across my screen. It could just be a CPU grind. There we go. Like I said, it's upping the size of the brush as we move further down on the tree trunk. The less the actual foliage itself, the less important it becomes, especially when you're in a copse of trees like this where they're all going to end up blending together. You just need to have mass, just mass. Keep working here. Again, you have more definition at the top where it separates itself, and as you move further down the piece, it becomes more obscured and faded, whether you're fading out into the grays like here, or you're just making a larger dense mass at the bottom like in the trees here. The effect is the same, that it becomes less distinguished the further down in the form you get. And it's not always that way. If your perspective is from the ground up, then you're going to want to have more definition further down and more fade towards the top. As you're working against, the perspective is working to move away from you. So to be able to apply that distance, you fade at the top. But in an overhead shot, like an overland shot like this, where you're seeing everything, you want more definition at the top and fade into obscurity at the bottom, because that's where your atmospheric distortion is going to take effect. Here like that. Again, I'm just gonna mash some texture in here, build up some clumpage to help push the stuff back here back a little bit more and create these little degrees of separation. So we can come in through here, we can just smudge this stuff up a little bit, working into the canvas before we start tapping and erasing that in a bit. Real easy. And reset this a little bit to fade it in. There we go. And over here, tap at this a bit to break it up. Now I want to add in a highlight layer. Sure. Yeah, that's not really working. That ain't working. That's the way you do it. Let's get. I'm going to need to use a different type of. I think I want to make the color a little brighter. I want to use a different brush. I want to use my half stroke branch brush. Squash it down a bit. There. This should hopefully produce some interesting results for us. There we go. Let's tap at that. And then we're using, we're using a 40% eraser. So it erases some of the information, but not all of it. And if I tap at the same spot repeatedly, it causes it to fade further and obscures the texture more. So if we move further back towards the forest, we want less definition, more obscurity. As we move out towards the right, at the edge of the piece, we want to have more clarity. So I'm going to that. I'm on raw. There, nice. It causes a nice fakey texture. The eye fills in a lot of the details because it wants to make sense. Like, it recognizes trees, and so it will start rendering and resolving these little flumps as branches and effects. I don't have to do a lot of work for it. Your eye is going to do the work for me. See? It actually doesn't look that bad when you actually zoom in on it. So it sells the effect really easily. But as you pan out, your eye just starts to blend it all in. So we'll do some brush work. We'll do some scrub work in front of that as well to help ground the trees in. But for now, we're just poking up the texture here and erasing a little bit. Super easy to do. There we go. Just working it in. There. Push that around at the base a little bit. That feels pretty good. Cool. Let's see. What's the next thing we need to do? I want to work in some ground brush. So we're going to go back to... Let's go back to this brush. I like this one a lot. Yes, that's what we want to do. All right, let's go check out our references up here. Nice. Mark that into the canvas a little bit. It's more dark like that. There we go. Hey, timely timer. All right. This is our last 20 minutes we're at now. So we're going to keep working this this landscape a little bit. Hopefully I'll be able to get the rest of the trees in this block done. This is session 4 of this project, and I wanted it to be done in 6 Saturdays. And it doesn't look like currently I'm on goal to do that, which means I'm going to need to start picking up and working on this a bit during the week or on off time, which is fine. There you go. I'm going to add another layer here. We're going to use the highlight color that we picked out and see how that sits. Ooh, I think I'm going to like that. All right, so let's do it like this. Do some tumbles through there. We'll see how this ends up. I use our eraser to burn off a lot of it so it becomes highlight texture inside of the mass overall. And I use opacity to drop the intensity of it. So we do that. We pull at the edges a little bit to work it into the ground. Like that. Similarly through here, we can tap that in, get those highlights going, up the size of the brush a little bit as we move across the canvas. There's these little pock marks in there that we're interested in, the little chunkety missing bits. That's where all the texture hides. So when I come with an eraser, it helps emphasize that and creates different depths of shadow. That's what helps create the illusion of foliage. across like that. Pull and fade it into the canvas here at the base. I'll come through and erase it some more. There, work that into the canvas here. Little highlights. There we go. It's coming along nicely. I'm pretty pleased with that. Work down here like that. Smudge that in and then erase that a bit to create some negative space texture. Fade that down a little bit by erasing that at some. We can back that down a little bit to take some of the highlight off of it. There we go, not bad. So yeah, we're building little coasts of trees, little patches of grass and stuff, and then having the ground pushing through on it. So that makes fun little background texture. It all kind of bleeds together after a while, but that's a forest, so they do that. Back copse. Front copse of trees. So now we want to grab a darker highlight, darker shadow, and brighter highlight. That should probably do okay. I know I'm running out of time. Still got 13 minutes. I'm gonna grab some coffee. And let's work the problem. First thing we're doing is we're just fuzzing up the trunk a little bit. Oops, I just locked up, so I'm gonna have to hit save. I have to close and reopen the program. Close and reopen. Zoom back in. There. I'm just working the brush back and forth in a like a metronome. going to keep upping the size of the brush as we get further down, as the foliage starts to thicken in and fold into itself. Lots of stipple in here. But that's how you do it. Stipple, stipple, stipple. Stippling away. You can see as I get further down, I'm causing a wider, like the metronome swings wider with bigger brushes as we move further down the tree. Because that's how conifers work. I typically do these things on Saturdays, but and I like to do as much on screen as I can. But I'm at a point where I need to be, if I'm going to have this done by mid-October, that gives me like 3 more weeks at best. So I'm probably going to have to end up working some of this foliage off camera. Like I'll end up working this over here off camera. I'll probably build out some of the forest here at the front end off camera. But you guys are getting the gist of what we're doing. I like to do this on stream not only for proof of production for the client, but also to help demonstrate to folks that are tuning in, just to take a look at how this stuff gets built, like how you can do Bob Ross stuff using digital paint, and how you don't have to see color to be able to paint in color. Just need to be able to know how to use references and be able to build things out, which is one of the purposes of this stream. Since I don't see any color, if you know anybody that doesn't see color, that has a passion for art, that laments that they can't see the color they're working with, steer them over this way. I will help get past those limitations, because I had to deal with them myself. I realized pretty early on that if I didn't get into color work, that I'd never be much of a freelance illustrator. I'm really good with pencils and ink, but the color is a completely different level, and I have to be able to operate inside that space if I want to be that type of a serious artist. I want to be a serious artist. There, put that out, and then we'll do the same thing with this one, and then we'll be done with this copse of trees as well. There we go. And then we just kind of clump it all down here at the bottom. Chunk, 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 chunk. Just chunk it all in. Not worrying about any kind of texture down here right now. We just want to blend this mass in so it gets grounded, literally grounded into the hill. Work that into the canvas. Create these cool little pockets here so we can, since this is on a separate layer, we can take this little pocket over here and we can do something with it. Like add some brush or some texture, some like grassiness or like some rocks. Maybe like a little inlet over here. I could carve out like a chunk like that to create this like little pocket space. But we are 5 minutes away from done for the day, so I'm thinking I can tap at this a little bit. Create some highlights. We're gonna fade erase a lot of that anyway. See, like that, but it still counts as highlights. Almost done for the day. I'm just going to tap some of this stuff. I think I can get away with tapping on this front foliage so you guys can see where it is that we're going. So you'll know what I'm doing over here. When I do this off screen, you're going to know, well, I just saw him build it over here, so I know what he's doing. So you aren't losing any information. I'm just shortcutting the process and just side swiping and doing a star swipe so you don't have to worry about watching me do it again. But when we come back next week, we'll be working on the foreground, and then from there, it's going to just be rendering the machine. So I don't know if I'm going to be on. I may be on to this later on this week. I'm not sure. We'll have to see what my schedule looks like. But I may come back and be able to visit this again. But this is just one of 4 projects that I'm working on right now, and I stream 6 days a week. So if this has been interesting for you, please like and subscribe. Stick around, show up, hang out with us down here and chat. Love having you guys around. Love getting some feedback from folks. Sometimes I need some help with color references, so it's great to have people around to help me out with that on the fly if necessary. Just be here like that. You can see that I'm fading away at the bottoms of these tufts instead of the tops of them, so that the tufts remain highlighted, because as you move further into the conifer branches, these little needles wouldn't be as visible further into the mass. So erasing, like keeping the tips preserved, but erasing into the body of it is the appropriate way to render these things. Just like that. I said just like that. Thank you. Now I'm going to drop the opacity of the branches themselves so that they fade into the mass easier. Thank you. All right, we're going to stop there. No more timers. I'm just going to finish out the coloring here real quick, and then we'll call this one done for the day. Drop some texture in here, and then erase a lot of it, and texture again, and erase a lot of it, and then texture again, and erase a lot of it, and texture again. Just changing the angle of the brushes like this changes the foliage. It changes the type of plants that are interacting. Like I'm doing these consistent rows and layers now that curve in front of the trees. So that means that I'm building out. It'll look like bushes picking up. Fade that in using a light eraser just to blend the whole thing down. And then using a smaller brush as I move my way around here to the front. More delicate. There. Get that built out like that. Brush that in. Now we'll make another layer. And do the same curving, but at a little bit, just like with the hills, we're doing another layer in front of that back mass. So we start pushing the actual copes of trees further back into the canvas by having additional layers of foliage in front of them. And this will also help further ground this chunk of foliage into the canvas and into the environment. See, just pushing it in. I can use a smudge brush to pull at the edges of that a little bit. Then here, erase it some, and pull at the canvas, blend it in. There you go, just like that. Just like that. And I'm just doing ground, like moss and little fronds, little ground plants. There, see? But this feels too unnaturally linear, so I'm going to break that up with a little lump here. Its own little bush that's jumping out. Help make itself feel important. smudge it in. There we go. See, nice little copse of trees with some foliage going on there. I'm actually going to add an extra layer here and just build in some stuff here. Seeing these little pockets here, I can drop some little scrubs in. There we go. There. Just erasing a little bit just to blend it in. There. There, see? Easy peasy. So I'm going to do that for over here off screen so I don't bore you with that process. And we have another grouping. Actually, I don't think I need this grouping here specifically, but I am going to need to have trees, like since we're getting into the foreground here, I am going to need to curve around like this and start filling all this in with foliage as well. So I'll save this front curve here, all these trees here and these foreground trees here. I'll save those for next time. But I am going to finish off all these back hills here and get all that stuff fleshed out. But I'll show you the progression, the layers that we're stepping through to move up. But as you can see, we're building depth into the piece. We have an opportunity here to mess around with this. But again, the overall result is going to be this thing getting dropped into the middle of it. So as you can see here, a lot of this stuff becomes less and less relevant, but all of it's still back in there. It's just no longer competing for this isn't going to be competing for the attention, because all of that's going to be faded into the back. So I can actually raise this up a bit. There. Shift this offline just a touch like that. See, I've got this hollow space right here, and I can put the top of the turret in that gap, and it'll help keep that whole space defined. So I'm really liking how this composition is coming along so far. So I'm calling this I'm going to call this pretty much a smash success so far, anyway. Get rid of that. You got the close. Yep, and then we'll be able to play around with something inside of here. I mean, I don't really need to play around with it much because it's going to get blocked off by the weapon, but I do want to have texture and stuff. Like maybe I'll have some water, like a little lake back here. It'll be fun to be able to frame it around here. And we'll fill this in with foliage, and then again we'll come back and we'll have the foreground here that we'll work on next week. Once we have the foreground finished, then we'll come back and we'll start working on the weapon specifically to center on the piece. So that's it for now. That's what we're doing. Thanks a lot for tagging along, everybody. And so yeah, this is where we're at so far. We need to build in some coolness inside of here, but we have a nice little copse of trees back here, which we're seeing reflected here, and we've got some nice little foliage interaction texture going on here. But when we look at the full piece here, there you go. So this guy's going to end up being a pretty fucking sick piece when we're done with it. I'm pretty excited. Just the landscape alone should be pretty nice, but then when we drop the weapon into it, it's just going to take it up to a new level. So that's it for the day, guys. I am done. So there's the monster manual, the Eldraine monster manual that got dropped, and I have the color mana spell point variant rules on the DM's Guild. So I'm kind of the MTG guy out there in the D&D building space. So proud to be him. And since Eldraine came out, obviously it's something I'm going to have to take a look at. So I'm going to take a break here for a couple hours. I'm thinking maybe Yeah, maybe tonight, like at maybe like in 8 hours. I'll come back this evening and we'll start looking at Eldraine. And then I'll probably spend time. I have time tomorrow that I very rarely do I have time on Sunday. But I will have time on Sunday. And so tomorrow I can come back and I can work on, we can continue exploring Eldraine as well. So thanks a lot for being here, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon down below to get notification when I'm around. And I'll be back in about 8 hours. So see you guys then.